How do you honor those who have gone before? What do you do to remember them? How do you gain closure? How do you decide when you've mourned them enough? These are the questions that the OPUS series uses to hook us into its stories. Chances are most people haven't heard of OPUS. The developer, Sigono, is a small Taiwanese developer with a very straightforward mission: create unique, heartfelt experiences that bring people joy. It's this goal that led to the ongoing creation of the series I'm talking about today. What they don't tell you is that these games are custom built to have you crying by the end, and even after going through each game multiple times, I can't fully say why. Currently, there are 3 games, with the 4th, Prison Peak, scheduled for release sometime this month. I wanted to take that as an excuse to go through each of these games and hopefully convince a few more people to try it out. Despite the shared universe, you really don't need to play these games back to back. The gaps in their narratives are thousands of years apart, leading to interesting connections between them that nevertheless fail to play into the story. A good example of this are witches, which appear in both Rocket of Whispers and Echo of Starsong, but mean drastically different things in both games. This is just one example of the way Sigono seems to build their worlds. Memories. In this case, it's banking on players remembering elements of the previous games so it can subvert them. Over time, the memories build up. Context gives them meaning, and your time with the games is enhanced as a result. The first of these games, Opus, The Day We Found Earth, is the easiest to summarize. It follows the journey? Is it a journey if we don't move? Whatever. The deeds of this little guy. Emeth, likely named after the Hebrew word for truth that was used to bring the Prague golem to life, is a quirky little guy. He's such a little guy that he acts exactly like the baby boy he technically is. He whines, gets really happy, is super proud of himself when he does well. He exudes toddler energy, minus the kicking you in the shins part. You'd need legs for that. His job is to use the OPUS space telescope to locate Earth, a goal he shared with his creator, Lisa. For the majority of the game, that's exactly what he does, getting closer and closer with each failed planet. His determination only increases when he understands the why of his task. Finding Earth could restore the human genome after a millennia of genetic engineering. It turns out his creator may, herself, be a victim of this, and Emeth's quite attached to his creator. Lisa, the hologram, may look like her, but she's definitely not her. It's the back and forth between these two that keeps the game interesting, and over time, Emeth grudgingly accepts her help. Doing so unlocks more features and rooms of the OPUS satellite, allowing us to find out what happened to the original Lisa and her assistant Makoto. Lisa, the AI, I knew this would get confusing, begins trying more dangerous things to hack into later rooms for the robot, and doing so gets her noticed by the satellite's firewall. After getting zapped out of existence, Emeth is left to explore the remaining rooms by himself. As we get closer to the 10,000th planet, Emeth's batteries begin to run dry, and he loses power just before finding that last one. The game is endearing enough, but Emeth's childlike personality wore on me. While Emeth and Lisa's relationship is clearly the focus, I can't forgive Emeth for the way he guilts Lisa into doing more and more dangerous things for him. Yes, he's a toddler, but every time the assistant AI tries to help him, he says something mean or abrasive to her. Over time, that cools, but he still keeps asking her to do things for him that might hurt her. And when she at last disappears, I can't really sympathize with him. And then the ending happens. These endings are, without a doubt, where Sigono shines. As Emeth comes to terms with his loneliness and the discovery that his creator, who he wanted to show Earth so much, is likely dead, Emeth starts to despair. After falling asleep due to lack of power, a sudden surge of energy reboots both him and the Lisa AI. They don't have much time to celebrate, though, as Lisa, the sun? Really?
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Why are you so hysterical?
Begins to expand. threatening the OPUS telescope orbiting it. It's at this moment when the final suggestion for Earth's location is given, right behind the swiftly expanding star. There's more to the game, but this is the majority of its story. And we don't ever hear much about the fates of Emeth or Lisa once it's over. At least from the game itself. Sagona later released a manga that gave a little more insight into Makoto's and Lisa's well-being, mostly confirming that they were still alive. This is unfortunately untranslated, but I was able to read some of it thanks to the help of some very dedicated fans of the series. Still, the ending does its job. It left me with a final happiness that Emeth would get to see the planet his creator always told him about. One thing that gets brought up in this game is Earthology, which is the primary reason Lisa was trying to find Earth to begin with. Having long lost the location of their original home, humans now regard the planet as a myth, despite those myths being extremely detailed. Lisa, a fervent believer of Earthology, also believes that rediscovering Earth can restore the human genome, undoing the damage that's been done to it. We don't hear too much else about Earthology for a while, but keep it in mind. This is one of the few threads connecting this game to the next. As much as I'm lukewarm on the day we found Earth, the next title, Rocket of Whispers, had me from the moment it launched. Sagono's team has always been exceptionally good at making music that fits the moment, and the very first few notes of the main menu theme grabbed my attention. I'll be straight with you, I'm not a music guy, despite owning a piano, cello, and 2 flutes. How did this even happen? But I know what I like. Music is one of the best ways to grab my attention in a game. True for anything, really. Just look at all the anime I find through music. But anyway, I just want to call out both Rocket of Whispers and Echo of Star Song for their stunning OSTs, which consistently carried the emotion both these games are known for. Rocket of Whispers is a surprisingly complex release. Not only did it release with a full game, but there's a free prologue that adds little to the game's story. At around 7 minutes long, it's remarkably effective in telling the story of Fei Lin, last living witch of the local Earthology church, as she wakes up from cryosleep. First of all, she wasn't frozen willingly. Having just barely become a full-fledged witch, she is hidden away to preserve their knowledge and culture. Just before she was spirited away, a virus broke out, wiping out over 99% of the planet's population and leading many of the survivors to blame the witches. Fei Lin, who was promised to be greeted with open arms and a better world, instead wakes up decades later to a cold temple and a failing life support system. The promises the other witches made also lay broken in the snow, leaving her alone to shoulder their entire purpose. Because ghosts on this planet are real, restless, and without the witches, they can never reach the stars to find peace. There are now millions of unresolved souls. Phelan can see them all, and she's not the only one. The game opens with a ritual launch, a space burial, viewed through a young John's eyes. His father was the rocket engineer that built the very same rockets used in those launches, and at the time, John wanted to be just like him. Now, John is a survivor of the very same disease that orphaned Faye. Unlike her, he has no reverence for the souls that would constantly follow him, seeking the rockets that would ferry them to space. They keep getting louder, and he's growing desperate. It's this desperation that leads to him working with Faye to build the rockets that will finally grant him and them peace. Or at least that's the theory. So, of course, we begin the game standing over the remains of a failed rocket. Rocket number 12. And John getting increasingly irritated by the ghosts that won't stop bothering him.
You will help us, right?
This game, much like The Day We Found Earth, is about the slow progression of the relationship between Faye and John. I do want to call out something. This is not a romance, though it could be interpreted that way.
I want to go back.
Faye is ever hopeful that they might succeed, and thanks to her training, has the technical know-how to build the rockets. John, on the other hand, does most of the heavy lifting and scavenging. This isn't a will they won't they. John is thoroughly fed up with all of Faye's optimism and promises, and over time their relationship gets worse and worse. Revealing one of John's favorite responses to Faye should clarify his relationship with her. That's what you always say. Failed launch after failed launch breaks both of them down. For the most part, the game follows a simple loop. Explore to find new rocket parts and materials, build new upgrades and enhance how far you can explore, finish the conditions of the next rocket and watch the launch. What's interesting about the game are the memories that John comes across while exploring. They don't add much to the narrative, but they fluff out the environment, giving you a tiny look into what everything was like before the disease.
Careful.
Adding to this are the various ghosts you encounter, which all depart after brief contact with John. Their parting words can vary from words of kindness to insults to pleas for deliverance.
Be careful.
By the end of the game, you've almost certainly started to ignore them, just like John has. There are moments of hope. After their first nearly successful launch, John briefly gets a tiny respite from the voices that have been tormenting him all this time. And when that hope comes literally crashing back down, the voices are back, just like they never left. It's enough, though. For John, he saw an ending to his pain. He understood that if he works hard enough, helps Faye, tries his best to remain positive, he could see it through. He starts looking for parts with a fervor that surprises the young witch. He uncovers the disaster of the new Malkuth mine, searches through the remains of the town. He spends his spare time restoring the relics of those who once lived there. Another rocket is built. It fails. And then another. And another. John's mood, already stormy, darkens. He begins looking further afield for parts. As he builds more tools to survive in the winter wasteland, he uncovers more painful memories, more people who didn't make it. He loses faith in the space burials. He questions if being free of the voices is even worth all the effort, all the pain, all the risk. Ghosts become omnipresent. Danger stalks John. His comments become nastier. Finally, he says something that goes too far. And one day, when he comes back, Faye is gone. All she leaves is a note, telling him that she'll be back soon, with the last part the current rocket needs, the refrigerant unit that formed a key part of her cryopod. Her last words to him are, "You're a coward, John. But don't worry, I'm here for you." A week later, she still hasn't returned. John isn't the only one who's had problems. Despite her optimism, Fei Lin, witch of the 46th generation, has had to stand tall through all of this. She's saddled with the responsibility of the witches that came before her, the souls of the dead, John, her own sense of duty, and her lack of faith in her own abilities. How she remains standing through everything John said, through that permanently grumpy attitude, his lack of reverence for the dead they're doing this all for. I don't understand it. Faye's not like John, though. Where he just wants to see the ghosts gone, she can't bear to let them go. She is left alone in this world with no one else other than him. If they ever do complete that final launch, then she finally has to say goodbye to everyone she ever knew. John was given a choice to live in this world, and that choice saved his life. Faye was forced into this world, and it cost her everyone else's life. When John does explode on her, he claims she doesn't understand the dangers her requests put him through. He says she doesn't worry about him, that all she thinks about is space burials. Nothing could be further from the truth. Faye's struggling with her inability to help John through the entire game, and her lack of skills as a witch keep being confirmed over and over by each failed launch. On top of this, all she can do when John's out scavenging is worry for him. Only when she realizes she knows the location of the final rocket part does she get the chance to flip the script. Now, it's John who gets to worry about her. What John didn't realize was that despite his irritation, Faye's words did have an effect on him. She was able to give him hope that if they kept working, they would someday succeed. Only when he stopped trying would that hope fade. Faye became the core that held this poor, desperate, broken, fragmented man together. She held off a deep-seated fear present in all of us, the fear of being left alone. Without her, he can't continue. Out of options, he begins to climb the sacred mountain to the Earthology temple Faye once rested in. He knows this is a one-way trip. He doesn't have the gear or preparation needed to survive. The snow is deepening. But he also knows that at the end of this, he needs Faye to survive for both of their sakes.
We're leaving, John.
As he begins to climb the mountain, a blizzard sets in. The ghosts he so frequently pushed away guide him to safety from the storm. Slowly, step by step, he makes his way closer to the temple and, he hopes, to Faye. As he gets closer, his perception of the ghosts that haunt him start to shift. He finally recognizes them as the remaining memories of his parents, who disappeared when they tried to find the final parts needed for the last space burial. Their promise to return, never fulfilled, left him with a mistrust of promises in general. It's why Faye's optimism was never shared. Promises mean nothing unless they're kept, and in his eyes, no one ever kept them. He recognizes, at last, that the greatest barrier for him is not the effort it takes to launch the space burials. It's the fear of being left behind. His inability to recognize his parents is because he could never muster the courage to say goodbye. It's this fear that pushes him up the mountain until he at last passes out from the cold. There are moments when John can get hurt. A wolf might attack him. He might get caught in deep snow, be attacked by ghosts at night, or fail to make a dangerous jump. When this happens, he blacks out, and during those moments, he sees this. This strange space is always cut off by Faye rescuing him. Faye was the last witch to ever be trained by the Earthologists. She was the only one of them that survived, and had only ever overseen one rocket launch. She's young, inexperienced, and naive. She's also the only witch that John had ever met before the plague. In that last out-of-body experience, John and Faye both meet each other. Their memories, long separated, now merge, and he sees that she was the same witch he met back then. She was the witch that shared that first rocket launch with him. 20 years later, here she is. They barely make it back to the Earthologist's temple, to the warmth of Faye's fire. Neither can remember what they saw, but they're both convinced it was incredibly important. Together, they huddle next to the fire. They can't stop crying, but they don't know why. To this day, they don't remember that they met each other at the first launch. The game ends with both of them going through that final launch checklist. With the last piece they need and their goals finally aligned, they successfully make that bridge to the stars. John is at last able to say goodbye to everyone he used to know, along with Faye. They stand together, watching the last space burial. I love this game. This is the one that made me push the Opus series up my list. While The Day We Found Earth didn't impress me, this game met with my high standards for emotional storytelling and surpassed them. It's incredible what Sagona managed to do with just two characters, a world, and a concept. You can really feel the crushing weight on Phelan. You understand how she can't allow herself to give in to despair. You admire how she keeps going. At the same time, you can understand John's desperation, his need for relief, how he's been under siege for his entire life. You get why he's like this. Their clashing opinions on the souls of the dead are what make this game interesting, as it's not until that last moment that John finally understands his own hatred for space burials. He both treasured and hated his time with Fei Lin, but he was never able to work through those feelings. He seems to dislike her for the very traits I've described at first, but as the rocket launches keep failing and things keep getting more dangerous, all he wants is peace. He becomes not unlike a ghost himself. He eventually does understand that, just like Faye, he doesn't want to say goodbye. He just hides it under a childish angst that, having grown up completely alone, he never had the opportunity to grow out of. I love John for the complex and layered character he is. Somehow, they made him stand out, despite how angry and irritated he appears. Sagona really did accomplish their goal with this game, and on a second playthrough, I found myself bawling my eyes out at the end, just as the first. Even while I was rewatching the ending footage, I couldn't stop the tears. This is why I present these to you. But it's also not how I found this series. I found this series through the third title, Echo of Starsong. Echo of Starsong is a vast jump forward for the series. Not only is it the introduction of a complex world almost completely alien to our own, it has the largest cast of any Opus game. It's framed around a retelling of the game's events by Jun. Events that happened 66 years ago. We know next to nothing about Jun, or why he's slowly making his way through an ancient ruin, but I find a lot of charm in this framing device. There's small moments that remind you of it. Every time the game starts up, Jun resumes the story, and every time he dies, he'll take a step back, blame his faulty memory, and start over. Every time we get a new item, we also get some of Jun's recollections of it. The same goes for reaching a new location. The game draws you in through Jun as a storyteller, so you can meet the real star of his life, Ada Loon. Ada is a witch, one of the remaining members of a faction known as the Witching Tower. Now I know what you're thinking, but these witches are not the same as the Earthology witches. The civilization they live in uses a power source called Lumen, and what exactly it is will be covered later. For now, all that we know about witches is that they can locate any source of lumen at vast distances. This allows them to hunt down lumen no matter how it's used. It could be a ship, a lumen cave where lumen is mined, or a space station. Nothing is safe from the witches. It's this fact that decided the winners of the Lumen War, when the witches sided with a megacorporation known as United Mining. After the war ended, United Mining betrayed the witches, labeling them as war machines for their part in the conflict. The resulting slander obliterated the Witching Tower's reputation, and eventually the witching tower itself, scattering the remaining witches to the stars. Ada was one such witch. Unlike the rest, she was able to escape participation due to her damaged throat and intervention from her mentor, Red Grant. Jun met Ada when he was looking for lumen caves for his family. Dishonored and outcast from his own lands, his rash actions cost his family everything they had, leaving him with next to nothing but his ship, Kun, and his mentor and guardian, Kay. It was during this search for lumen that he got mixed up with Ada and her only crew member, Remy. In an attempt to save them from falling victim to pirates, Kay is shot and Kun is destroyed. Thus begins an adventure that eventually leads to Kay's death and Jun becoming a member of Ada's crew aboard their ship, the Red Chamber. What I like about this opening is pretty simple. Through a combination of flashbacks and careful dialogue, we start to unravel some of both characters. Both of them are young, rash, and quick to act. Too quick. Ada is also very proud and shrewd, where Jun is almost humble to a fault. A real top and bottom dynamic, you know what I mean? There's growing signs that both of them need each other to function. They gradually form a hesitant but natural relationship, much to the dismay of Ada's adopted sister, Remy. Remy's funny. I don't know how to feel about her. She despises Jun entirely out of jealousy, and her covetous nature leads her to act out of her own interest on many occasions. For the first part of the story, we don't know much about her, and it's only later on that we finally start to learn more about her motivations and why she's so tightly attached to Ada. I'll leave her here for now, but trust me when I say she doesn't show her true colors for quite a while. Finally, there's Kay. This is an OPUS game, and these games are about those who have passed on. No one's passed on, so Kay gets the short straw. He's not around for long, but as a warrior guardian for Jun, he passes on his knowledge of cave running, as well as communicating clearly how Jun's people think of the witches. He's just as attached to Jun as Remy is to Ada, though his bonds are built out of gratitude and pride. Impressed by Jun's words to him as a child, he decided to act as a parental figure for as long as he could. He literally takes a bullet for the kid multiple times, shrugging off worry for him like water. When he does eventually die, after a frankly silly number of death flags, play the clips.
なんと立派になられてとんでもない序に振り回されないように栄誉のためです段までたどり着くお姿を鍛えられたことは私の誇りです通信機を切るには静かになった
It's on his own terms. Understanding a message left for him by an assassin sent by Jun's family, he refuses to betray Jun. Even in his wounded state, he's more than a match for the assassin. Jun finds him still conscious, but as they walk back to the Red Chamber, he dies. With Kay gone, reality hits Jun all at once. Death is not something you ignore, especially for the pseudo-father that his guardian had become. It finally bolsters the kid, and we notice a very rapid and sudden growth in him. His humility, previously outstripped by his juvenile anger and desire to save his clan from his own mistake, is tempered by the lessons Kay taught him. No matter how far you are into the game, Kay never really leaves Jun, even after he's been launched back home in a space casket. This entire game takes place in the solar system of Thousand Peaks, but it's more of a cosmic ocean than anything else. As we leapfrog from landmark to landmark, Jun and Ada encounter memories in the world. These can be as small as materials or as large as individual places. Of note are the various Mirian ruins, which tell the stories of a long-dead civilization that once controlled the Lumen before the humans. Gods born from the fires of the sun god Ignis, these poor creatures can't control the power within them. Created from Lumen, they repeatedly self-immolated until one god, Helios, finally taught them how to survive. His wife, Terra, was the first god who could sing. It was Terra that led the gods forth to populate the system, bringing life everywhere she stepped. It's this myth that slowly unfolds over the course of the story as Ada and Jun get closer to its origin. Finally, you can't escape the Lumen, the ice blue energy source that the previous civilization gathered. Found in the numerous asteroid-like Lumen caves, it seems to be only mineable in Thousand Peaks. As a power source for all ships and a carrier of memories, Lumen is the most important resource in the galaxy. It's this strange substance that Jun was cast out to find, and it's what Ada's old Lumen-seeking vessel, once a military craft, is able to search for so effortlessly. Lumen is an odd resource. It can explode, but not through volatility. Lumen expands and reacts to sound, and it's the sound created through this process that the game gets its name from. Throughout Jun and Ada's journey, they are searching for star songs, and these haunting melodies open doors that allow deeper access to the mysteries hidden in the Mirian civilization. Lumen is so omnipresent that it makes its way into common sayings, replacing things we would commonly say in exasperation. Ada eventually reveals that the memories, even the consciousness, that the Lumen contains aren't limited to this time and space, a fact Jun comes face to face with during one of his cave explorations. Great Lumen, I'm really trying to keep this short. By now, you should have a good idea of whether or not you want to play this game. I'd say it's worth your time, but it's a very railroaded experience. Despite how the world expands over time, there's little reason to go back to a place you've already visited. And trying to sequence break is impossible due to the story-gated upgrades. While I'll be spoiling the ending here, your experience playing the game will differ very little from my experience. This is much closer to a visual novel than any of Suguna's other games, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. As it is extremely pretty when it wants to be, and the world building is top-notch. I have other opinions about the storytelling of Starsong, but we'll get to that later. By this point in the game, Jun's goal is to find more Lumen caves, sample a perfect Starsong, and claim it for mining rights. If he finds enough, he can restore his clan's honor, the same clan that incidentally sent an assassin after him, and provide for his family back home. For now, the crew follows hints of cave coordinates, but it's clear that Ada's looking for something else. With each new cave discovered, there's a hint of disappointment in her. She won't say what it is she's searching for. Yet. Jun just hasn't been around long enough. Instead, we see some of the dynamic between Jun and Remy developing. Remy mostly wants Jun gone and takes every opportunity possible to enforce this. Mostly in complaints to her definitely not a lover, Benzel. Alongside that, we learn more about the Mirian myth and how it expands. Eventually, the crew starts uncovering more of the history of the Lumen War as they track Lumen caves ever farther from the central star. And then comes the Lumen Ziggurat. This is a cave unlike any other, in that it's more of a gigantic space station made by the Mirian civilization. It orbits the very rim of the Thousand Peaks solar system, and everything about it is a mystery. The further we go in the game, the greater significance the Lumen Ziggurat has. It's mentioned that its appearance is like a gigantic synthesceptor, the same tool that Jun uses to perform star songs and interact with the Mirian gates. It's only when Jun and Ada accidentally activate it that they realize its purpose: to broadcast a star song past the rim of the Thousand Peaks, and through that, guide more Lumen to the Mirian Empire. Blasted away from the station while trying to protect Ada, Jun is thrown into the Lumen consciousness and the memories they contain. Emotionally ruined by the experience, he finally confronts his own role in Kay's death. Ada manages to catch up with him, and the following scene is one of the ones that makes me remember Echo of Starsong. Together, they talk about their losses. Jun calms down enough to take in what Ada's finally revealing. She's hunting for her own mentor, lost in the hunt for the mysterious Lumen Cave, Banshee. This wasn't it. But maybe, if she keeps searching, she can find her. Jun, in a place to understand her loss, makes a promise to Ada then. Together, they will find Red Grant. Maybe then, he can finally repay her for taking him in after everything that led to Kay's death. He can continue to honor Kay's memory by following the Lumen with her. The two sit down on the side of the space station, watching the expanding remnants of the Lumen explosion. Reminded of the flowers that surround her home, Ada invites Jin to see them when this is all over. Jin, as unintentionally sappy as ever, agrees, as long as it's with her. This promise will bind the two together for the rest of their journey. A year passes, and the crew of Red Chamber continues to amass wealth and fame. Jin and Ada grow closer, and Remy continues to hate Jin. Out of nowhere, a message about the missing Banshee expedition appears, prompting the crew to drop everything. This leads them to start exploring ever further from the center of the system. Danger ramps up as Ada pushes them to explore Lumen Caves already claimed under military jurisdiction. In the background, Remy stews on the knowledge that, as they find more Lumen Caves, the likelihood of Jin returning to his homeland and taking Ada with him increases. The pressure on her to deal with the dangers, both emotionally and physically, leads her to do something drastic. During a cave run, Jin is captured by the United Mining military, despite Remy's calculations indicating he should have had more than enough time. If it wasn't for Jin's close relationship with the captain of this group, he would have likely died. As it is, Bones calls off Jin's capture, allowing him to return to the Red Chamber injured but in one piece. He warns that this is probably the only time he can help them, though. Ada is furious. Remy's faulty calculations immediately fall under suspicion, and she tries to blame the aging ship. When pressured, she reveals Jin's own growing need to leave Red Chamber, causing an argument that Ada quickly breaks up. Jin has no stake in this game. He has no idea why Remy hates him so much. It's not until Jin is once more injured during an unexpected attack in the next Lumen Cave that Remy comes clean on the reason. While she was growing up, Remy internalized a lot of things about herself that she didn't like. Her eyes were strange. She was too small. She wasn't girly enough. She liked the trafficker who took advantage of her even after he disappeared. Because of this, she understands that hating Jin doesn't make any sense, and even makes her a worse person. But she does so anyway. That makes her hate herself more. And where Ada once acted as an emotional support to distract her from the spiral of self-hate, Ada has been neglecting her to spend more time with Jin. I hope it's obvious that there is no way Remy can deal with this sort of problem on her own. Only someone else can help her through this, but the person she'd normally go to only makes it worse. And as a result, she finally says this: "Why do you make me hate myself so much?" Ada, who also has some pretty severe self-doubt problems, suddenly realizes how badly she's been hurting the person who's become her little sister. The two come together again, and from this point onward, their relationship starts to heal. Ada rushes to Jin's aid, but it's only through Remy's connection to Benzel that they are able to save him. Connecting to the United Mining fleet currently shelling the Lumen Cave, Remy is able to contact Bones again. The redeemed pirate flies his ship into the cave, and they're able to finally save Jin, now buried beneath tons of rubble. As soon as he wakes up, Remy gets the opportunity to finally apologize to him. The two start to see eye to eye, and it seems like the crew of the Red Chamber might finally be able to resolve their differences. Except that neither of those Lumen Caves was Banshee. It isn't until Jin is healed from his near-death encounter that they rescue a survivor from the nearby black hole observation station. The man is near madness. He rants about a monster appearing out of nowhere, screaming a noise that cuts through the void. When they investigate the destroyed station, they confirm the horrifying star song, the same one that Red Grant was conscripted to find. At long last, Red Chamber finds their white whale. Racing to reach the Lumen Cave, which, it turns out, was a comet, Red Chamber approaches through the coma left behind it. It's only when they reach the comet and explore that they find the remains of the previous Banshee expedition. Red isn't here, and... Wait. What the fuck? They're holding hands! Ryu, censor that. We can't show that on YouTube. Anyway, as they continue to explore, they realize the folly of their trip. Banshee is not like other lumen caves. I mean, we knew that, but there's an even bigger difference. Where most of these caves serve as a place to collect and transmutate lumen for extraction, this cave is a trap meant to catch those searching for the corpse of Terra. By this point, the Mirian myth is pretty well laid out to the player. The ancient Mirian civilization was born from Lumen. Helios, the head god, then used the song to stabilize the gods so that they could control the lumen inside them. Terra, his beloved, taught the gods how to do this themselves. They then used Terra's song with the lumen ziggurat to guide massive amounts of lumen towards their local star, Ignis. This would produce an ever-increasing amount of lumen and guarantee that the gods would be able to live forever. Unfortunately, this also caused Ignis to grow steadily less stable, a stability that never recovered. The resulting tumult caused a civil war, and the dissenters targeted the source of this song, Terra. When she was killed, Helios and his allies killed all the gods who had dissented. Terra's body is retrieved and entombed within Excidium, the black hole that was being observed. The remaining gods collected all of the lumen flora they could find for her tomb, so that she could return when it bloomed. Unable to calm Ignis after all this, the gods, Helios included, were incinerated in a massive blast of light. The last act of Helios for Terra was to create Banshee to protect her body. This is important because as we get here, there's many hints that Ada and June are reincarnations of Terra and Helios. A funny tidbit while I was going through this, it's frequently noted how often Jin seems to blow up lumen caves, something he's done on 3 separate occasions at this point.
Jesus. This is why we can't have nice things.
And I attribute this as a nod to how Helios blew up the entire Mirian civilization. Fortunately for him, it's this exact trait that Ada and Jun used to get out of here. Just like with John before, the witch ends up saving Jin's life, and they make it back to the Red Chamber. When Jin wakes up, Ada and Remy reveal the information they found from the United mining ship that lay abandoned on Banshee. It turns out that there were 2 comets, with the other one shadowing Banshee's orbit. There were also 2 ships in the expedition, so they now know why there was only 1 ship on Banshee, and why Red Grant's corpse wasn't in it. While Ada begins making plans to head to the new comet, nicknamed Phoenix, Remy and Jin realize the odds of her surviving the trip are almost nil. Gradually, they talk her out of the suicide she's been planning. And against all of her desires, she agrees to try again when it's safer. I think it's time to talk about Ada in more detail. A central theme of Echo of Star Song is self-discovery, and it's something Ada's struggled with for her entire life. When she was cast out from the Mirian Witching Tower due to some strange illness damaging her voice, she thought it was because her abilities were underdeveloped. This is an excuse she struggles to ignore throughout the entire game, and leads to most of her self-doubt. When United Mining tries to recruit her to help find Banshee, her mentor takes her place. To Ada, this was a sign that Red didn't think she had the abilities to help, but it also melded with her earlier abandonment issues. Because of this, she doesn't like it when people try to protect her. Those people disappear. Even when Ada's abilities improved enough to allow her to perform most tasks other witches could, she wasn't allowed back into the Mirian Witching Tower. After all, this was after the war had ended and witches were largely discredited. It deepened her own doubt in herself, and when she was denied her identity as a witch, she clung to Red Grant as an ideal. Red viewed herself as a weapon and hated the idea of Ada growing up to be like her, so she tried to teach the girl to find her own self. This is a lesson that Ada struggles with for the entirety of the game, and it's here, right now, that she finally addresses it. Because despite agreeing to head back to Thousand Peaks, as they leave Banshee, the ship is hit by debris, causing an engine to detonate. Still on the bridge, Ada realizes there's nothing more she can do for them. In the end, there was only ever one answer. Ada's quest was always going to drag down everyone around her. She was a danger to herself and everyone she loved. Regardless of her intent, she kept hurting the people closest to her. First Red, then Remy, and now Jun. As the ship deteriorates, she decides to finally take that same step her master did. She sacrifices her life for that of her family. Over the intercom, she directs Jin to take the unconscious Remy to the cargo bay so that she can vent all oxygen from the ship and starve the fire. While they wait, she suggests he look through the seeds the ship has always carried. He does, and finds various plants clearly meant to represent each of them. Then he finds the plant Ada is named after, the fragrant white, with a simple floriography. As Jun reads it, he understands suddenly what Ada intends to do. "Please forgive me," Ada says as the cargo bay ejects from the ship, charting a path back towards Thousand Peaks and safety, knowing full well that the disintegrating red chamber will not survive the trip. Ada, now released from her duty as captain, sets course for Phoenix. From here on, we return to old Jun. He finishes his story with the revelation that the Lumen Cave he's in now is the same Phoenix Ada set out for, 66 years later. Hoping to see her one last time, he plays the same star song that once bound them together, and gets a response. A wisp of Lumen consciousness greets him, and somehow he understands that it's Ada. Just as Ada said, the Lumen is unbound by space and time, allowing them to reunite in spite of her death decades earlier. The ending didn't make sense to me initially. It wasn't until I rewatched it a few more times and sat down with one of my friends to talk through it that I was able to piece together all of the parts that make it work. There's a lot of foreshadowing, but not much of it is obvious. When Red says to follow the voice within, the game takes that literally. Ada's long had memories that weren't hers. In her dreams, she constantly hears a song, but can't sing back. A long time ago, Helios made a promise at Terra's grave that they would be reunited when the flowers bloom again. It turns out that the voice Ada heard was always her own, calling her to Phoenix. As reincarnations of Terra and Helios, Ada and Jun were always bound to meet here. The flow of Lumen meant that as long as they followed it, time would never block them from seeing each other again. Jun frequently used this exact same star song to guide Ada to him. The game even hints at a double meaning here. "I'll take you with me to a place I treasure deeply" means both her home and her place next to Jun. It's only here, in this ending, that Helios keeps his promise to Terra. A promise made again between Jun and Ada. But there's still more to it. It was only by giving up her master that Ada was able to find her. Because she saved Jun, she was able to follow that same star song to meet him again. In saying goodbye and deciding to turn back to Thousand Peaks, she was able to fully embrace herself, something she could never do as long as she kept searching for Red. She became Terra once more, while also remaining the Ada she always was. I've heard people say that Sagana's games rely heavily on music and emotion to tell their stories, and they lack depth because of that. I'd like to respectfully disagree. These games are full of depth, and unlike my time with Lobotomy Corporation, it's clear that it's not accidental. I think my conclusion on the Echo of Star Song's ending especially just highlights that you can't always take things at face value. A single read-through of a book is rarely enough. Hell, even 2 may not cover everything. I went through this game 3 times, twice as a player and once while rewatching the footage. Every time I learned something new, found more to appreciate. Even simple stories may be more than they appear. I was only able to fully see this game because I had someone else to give their perspective on it. Where does that leave us, though? Well, there is the question that binds all of these games together under the same title. How do you honor the dead? For each game, this is the central starting point for the rest of the story. In The Day We Found Earth, the answer was to continue on their wishes. Emmett didn't even know if Lisa was alive, but he felt it was intrinsic to his existence to find Earth for her regardless. This allows him to grow and learn things as he gets closer to her, and eventually, he's able to fulfill that wish. In Rocket of Whispers, things get a little more complicated. The how in the question could be changed to why, as both characters approach space burials from different perspectives. It asks us if they really matter, and eventually it reminds us that burials aren't just for the dead. The living need them as well. Phelan wants to avoid space burials so that she isn't left alone, and John avoids them because they bring up bad memories. Either way, we can't move on until it's done. Closure is impossible, and it's only when they realize that the healing can begin. In a way, we honor the dead by remembering them. This is also the first game where memories become a core part of the story. In Echo of Starsong, it took me much longer to answer that. Memories are plentiful, and there's a lot more dead. The game is filled with the memorials to the Lumen War and gigantic plaques honoring the Mirian Empire. I eventually found the answer in that theme of self-discovery. Ada's obsession with finding Red was always distracting her from the lessons Red left for her. Don't look for me. Follow the voice within. By focusing too much on an outside ideal, she missed the obvious lessons. Don't idolize the dead. Don't try to be them. The only thing we can do to move on is find the reasons we loved them to begin with. It was only when Ada began to value those who loved her above the ones that she loved that she was able to find herself. We remember the dead, but we also, inevitably, painfully, have to say goodbye. Thank you very much to NBFF, Kodica Leo, Loved Patch, and Techni1766 for continuing to donate at the highest tier. There will be a slight follow-up video for Opus, but I'm going to be returning to my time working on the Ruina and Project Moon stuff after this. There might be smaller side videos for other projects, but that's where I'm spending my attention right now. Thank you so much, everyone who's been donating. I don't have a job right now, so literally any donation, whether through Coffee or Patreon or really anything else, just helps a ton.